And now, time to answer the age-old question, what is the biggest city in the world? The short answer is Beijing, China. It occupies around 6,300 square miles, more than the entire state of Connecticut. The medium-sized answer is, it depends on what you mean by biggest and what you mean by city. The long answer is, sit back, relax, and take a couple of Adderall and I'll tell you all about it. Denver International Airport is an interesting place. It's the 5th busiest airport in the United States, the 16th busiest airport in the entire world, and the closest thing to a work of art that the commercial aviation industry has. It's also a bit of an anomaly. Whereas typical super busy airports are situated in super huge destination cities, DIA is used by most travelers as a stopover between where they were 3 hours ago and where they want to be later on tonight. The majority of passengers wandering through DIA's concourses at any given moment are not from Denver, nor are they visiting Denver, they're merely passing through. So if you find yourself in DIA someday and you've become bored with trying to decipher all the creepy murals on the walls, wander up to a complete stranger and say, "So, where are you from?" Now, assuming the person you talk to is American, you have a 14% chance that they'll say they're from New York, Los Angeles, or Chicago. Those are easily, unquestionably, the 3 biggest cities in the United States, so it's easy to imagine that 14% of the country's population lives in those 3 cities. Sounds about right, doesn't it? However, it turns out there's only a 4.6% chance that any given American actually lives in New York, LA, or Chicago. Why is this? Why do less than a third of Americans who say they live in a big city actually live in a big city? Why on earth would a random stranger who's never seen or spoken to you before have the audacity to lie to you? For a good answer to this question, let's head out east to a city rife with history, brotherly love, cheesesteaks, the central tine on the Devil's Pitchfork, rivers that tourists can't pronounce, and Eagles-related suicidal ideation, Philadelphia. Philly's a great place to start because it provides us with a comprehensive overview of what a city is and isn't, and how far a metropolitan area can spread. Alright, so here's the city of Philadelphia. About 142 square miles all told, and 1.5 million people. It's the 5th largest city in the United States, and it's kinda weird shaped, isn't it? I mentioned in an earlier video that cities typically spread out from the central hub evenly and circularly like a wheel. So how come Philly has all these straight lines around the rim, all these sharp 90-degree angles? And the Delaware River really isn't wide enough to prevent the city from expanding east and south to the other side. So how come the city just stops the instant it touches water? Are Philadelphians hydrophobic or something? What's the deal with this city, and how come it doesn't follow the universal rules of organic circular urban distribution? Let's move away from the strictly technical map of Philly and look at the road map instead. Oh, that looks a bit more realistic, doesn't it? We've got the hub in the middle there, we've got the spokes, we've got a rim, just like Paris, Denver, or Houston from the previous video. We have plenty of low-density suburban development in every direction. We have an instance of river jumping in the form of Camden, New Jersey. We also have an extremely important fixture, the airport, most of which technically exists outside of the city limits. What we have here in this larger picture is the metropolitan area. Taking a look at the numbers, Philadelphia, 142 square miles, 1.5 million people. Philadelphia metro area, 5,100 square miles, 6 million people. The latter, the bigger one, is what people are thinking about when they make mention of a specific city. Yes, Philly is its own entity and its own city, but the angular, rigid boundaries are a political administrative invention. The soul of Philadelphia doesn't terminate the instant you walk over the Ben Franklin Bridge or drive past Cheltenham Avenue. Metropolitan areas extend beyond geographic features like rivers, sometimes beyond state lines, and definitely beyond those weird-looking city borders, as is the case with Kansas City, New York, Denver, or Philadelphia. If you're at Denver International Airport and you ask a guy who lives in Camden, New Jersey where he's from, he'll tell you Camden or he'll tell you South Jersey, but he'll immediately qualify it with something along the lines of just across the river from Philadelphia. This makes him more understandable and more relatable to the average American traveler who might not know where Camden is, and guaranteed he has plenty of Philadelphia and plenty of southeastern Pennsylvania in his day-to-day experience. He potentially works at 15th and Chestnut, he knows his way around SEPTA, he flew out of Philadelphia International this morning, he drinks Yingling, and he almost certainly despises the New York Giants. That's a Philadelphia man, even if he lives slightly east of the city proper. So here's another question. What exactly is a metropolitan area? If a city is so rigidly bordered for political and administrative reasons, how do you define something much bigger, constantly expanding, and nebulous? The simple answer is There is no answer. There's no hard and fast definition for what constitutes a metro area, where it terminates, and what distinguishes it from surrounding rural areas or separate metro areas. This is because metropolitan areas are not so much about boundaries as they are about relationships. The relationships of people to other people, public services and infrastructure to the public, employees to workplaces, producers to consumers, and shared cultural consciousness. Here's another great example of what I mean. Dallas, Texas, home to everything you'd expect from the 9th biggest city in the United States. Lots of tall buildings, 4 major professional sports franchises, a huge theme park, a major international airport, several colleges and universities, and a nice public transit system. Yup, Dallas has it all, except for most of the stuff I just listed. Okay, it has the tall buildings, but it has no theme park. It has an airport, but the airport offers no international flights and only serves 8.5 million passengers per year. That's about 1/6 of the travelers that pass through Denver. And the most well-known university in Dallas, Southern Methodist, isn't actually in Dallas. It's in an enclave called University Park. Oh, and Dallas only has 2 major professional sports teams, as it happens, the Stars and the Mavericks. Let me ask you something. What's the first thing you think about when someone says Dallas? If you're over the age of 50 or your television is stuck on TNT, maybe you think about the TV show. The rest of us, though, typically think about something else when we hear the word Dallas. Something more immediately relevant, more central to the mystique of Texas, and ultimately much more evil, the Dallas Cowboys. That's how cultural awareness affects people's minds. We associate single things to other things until we can't separate the two anymore. In the same way the Gateway Arch is St. Louis and the Burj Khalifa is Dubai, the Dallas Cowboys are Dallas. But guess what? The Cowboys don't play their games in Dallas. Aw, don't be sad, Dallas. You're still an okay city. Oh, well, if you're bored on the weekends, you can always hang out at Six Flags. Oh yeah, sorry, that was a low blow. Well, hey, how about you fly down to Mexico for the weekend? You can get there easily from your world-class international airport. Nah, man, it's okay. Hey, how's your hockey team doing this year? Whoa, okay, relax. You can still watch them play. They're right down the street in the city of not Dallas, otherwise known as Arlington, Texas. You're thinking, oh, yeah, well, that's the new stadium, though. The Cowboys only started playing in Arlington in 2009. Yep, you're exactly right. They played in Texas Stadium before that. Texas Stadium isn't in Arlington. Texas Stadium is where you would expect a team called the Dallas Cowboys to play. In Irving, which is still technically in the realm of not Dallas. The last time the Dallas Cowboys actually played their home games in the city of Dallas was 1971, right here at the Cotton Bowl. They've played west of the city ever since. So have the city's 4th major franchise, the Texas Rangers, who also play in not Dallas. Oh, and that theme park I mentioned earlier, it's in not Dallas too. So what's with this not Dallas place? Arlington has 375,000 people, and it's the 7th biggest city in all of Texas, a state with no shortage of major cities. Doesn't look like anything special from above. Maybe we'll get a better idea of what's going on here if we turn on the road map and zoom out a little. Oh, right, that explains it. Not Dallas is smack in the middle of Dallas, the 3rd largest city in Texas, and Fort Worth, the 5th largest city in Texas. Oh, now this theme park and these stadiums, all 3 of which are right here, are starting to make sense. Oh, hey, look, I found the major international airport right up here, also roughly in the middle of Dallas and Fort Worth. It seems as though all these facilities were strategically placed in the middle of these 2 neighboring cities in order to conveniently cater to the largest number of potential customers. It seems as though these cities, Dallas, Fort Worth, and all the interior and exterior not Dallases, are so closely tied together that they're practically one giant megacity, a metropolitan complex, or a metroplex. Oh hey, that's convenient. Metroplex is one of the terms people use when referring to this area. It's also called DFW, which coincidentally is the code for that international airport, the 9th busiest airport in the world. Here's what I'm getting at. Dallas isn't just Dallas. It's also not Dallas, and all of not Dallas is also Dallas. Once we stop pretending that cities start and stop inside political lines, we realize that Dallas is part of a much, much bigger local organism. Fort Worth isn't just Fort Worth either. If you ask someone where they're from and they say Fort Worth, what's the first thing you think about? Dallas. And you think of Dallas because geographic familiarity and cultural influence has made it literally impossible for you to think of anything other than Dallas when someone says Fort Worth. It's practically a Pavlovian response. If they're from Arlington or Irving or Grand Prairie or any of the countless other not Dallases in the Metroplex, they probably won't even bother telling you where they're actually from. They'll say Dallas, or they'll say Fort Worth, or DFW, or North Texas, or some variation of that, because people tend to associate themselves with well-known, statistically relevant metropolitan areas. There's nothing wrong with this, and everyone does it. Someone who lives in Redwood City, California, is going to tell you they're from the Bay Area. Someone in Golden Valley, Minnesota will tell you they're from the Twin Cities. Someone from Oldsmar, Florida will tell you they're from Tampa Bay. Oh, by the way, this is a good time to mention that Tampa Bay isn't a city. It's a body of water around which several cities have popped up, thus turning into a multi-city metropolitan area similar to DFW. This might be a confusing revelation to all you sports fans out there who, because of the Buccaneers, Devil Rays, and Lightning, always refer to the teams in terms of Tampa Bay, not in terms of St. Petersburg, Tampa, Clearwater, and Brandon, each of which houses over 100,000 people. Okay, so let's finally answer that first question: what's the biggest city in the world? To answer this, we need to first admit that when we say biggest, we mean most populated rather than largest amount of landmass, because otherwise Beijing becomes the biggest city in the world by merit of its borders alone, even though it has 3 million fewer people than Karachi, Pakistan. We also need to discard the word city as a term that's worthless to anyone other than politicians and hoist up the idea of a metropolitan area instead, because otherwise we end up with pedantic statements like Memphis, Tennessee is a bigger city than Boston, Massachusetts, which is technically true but pragmatically false. Cities, by today's political definition, are small, weirdly shaped, and arbitrary. Metro areas are the living, breathing expression of natural human behavior and urban evolution. With those filters applied, our answer to the question of what is the most heavily populated metropolitan area in the world is Camden, New Jersey. No, not really. The answer is Tokyo. It's Tokyo, and it's not even close. Tokyo is absolutely enormous.